Hi there, we're back today with another update on our Miss Karen, and we are in the process of hand quilting this project now. And I wanted to share a little bit with you about how I've decided to quilt in the borders, and also how I'm making that happen after I've rolled it all the way up. Now, right now what I'm doing is I'm going to take a curved needle. I think you can see that. And I'm going to make a line of stitches right up here towards the top. And this is just going to be a little basting stitch to hold all the layers together, because we're going to do something in just a minute it's going to need that. Whoops. Well, that wasn't nice. One good thing is it's got a huge eye. And the reason I'm using the curved needle is because it doesn't require me to do acrobatics to get underneath what I'm doing. So I'm just taking some stitches in here that are probably an inch long. This is the, you can buy these little sets anywhere you find sewing materials, and they're used for a variety of things. In fact, I recently used one of these curved needles to repair part of a sofa, a little leather sofa, where the stitches had come out and it was separating, and I was able to use these little curved needles to go in and put the thread back through the holes that were already there in most cases, and then use the thread to draw the pieces together. It was pretty simple, a little difficult to get my fingers into the space, but it was not a difficult task to do. Okay, we are halfway. Whoops. Some of these stitches are a little bigger than an inch, but it doesn't really matter. The goal here is just to keep these pieces together. And I may not even go all the way. I think my thread's going to be a little bit short, so we may just use a couple of pins here at the bottom or at this very end. So let's see, a couple more. And I'm going through all three layers here. Okay, that's probably as far as we're going to get, and we're not even going to knot that off. I do want to take a couple of these little things here off. Some of these pins, my thread, all these little tools that we had. And then I'm going to tell you a couple of things. All right. So what happened was I quilted the white section with the design here, because I didn't know what I wanted to do as far as quilting went on the borders. I was pretty sure that I wanted to use a color matched thread similar to what I did here on the borders, so that the quilting didn't jump out at you. I didn't have to worry about being really equal in my stitches or straight or anything like that. Just get it close and make it work. So that's what I did. I did the white section first, and then I didn't worry too much about the borders. But then when I got all the white done, I needed to do something about those borders. So what I ended up doing was I ended up deciding to quilt just a line of stitches right here at the very edge, just like 1/8 of an inch. Usually by the time you finish stitching, it's a little bit bigger. And visually it looks like about 1/4 of an inch, but I set my little template that I use to keep my stitches straight and even at 1/8 of an inch away from that seam line here between the light green and the dark green. So I've got one row of stitches here, and then I've got another row of stitches about 1.5 inches away from that seam line again. Because remember, we had already decided we were going to trim this piece at least an inch on all sides. So when we trim that and put the binding on, that line of stitches should fall roughly in the center of that border. And then we've got 2 lines of them. So I think that's going to make a good frame around our project. Now, the way the Grace frame is designed is the whole purpose in this thing is not having to baste before you quilt. You put all of the materials, the quilt top, the batting, and the backing on this, and the rolling together is what sandwiches it. So now we've sandwiched this and we've quilted it up to here. Well, even with what we've just done, it's up to here. So we can't unroll it because unrolling it would separate those layers, and we can't do that anymore. So we have to figure out a way to roll this the other way to allow us to quilt down the sides here. So that was the point in basting that piece here. Let me grab another pair of scissors because we'll be here all day with these. So here we are. We've got the quilt top here, we've got the batting, and we've got the backing. The first thing we need to do is just cut the batting away because the batting is the only piece that rolls on this back bar. And we can do that just by cutting it up here. This is not cutting anything but the batting. No backing, no quilt top. That's just the batting. Okay, so we don't have to worry about that one at all now. And we have basted these 2 together. So really all we need to do is just make sure when we start rolling that we don't have any pins this way. All of our pins are this way, so they'll roll. So some of these that might be here on the outside, we just need to adjust those. So when we get ready to roll, they will be in the right direction. And that's only because you can roll them this way, but if they're this way, they're going to poke through and they may tear your fabric. So now we've got those on there. And we can unlock these. Those are your little locks. And we can start rolling this way. And as we roll, we'll need to just to make sure that that stays down flat and actually rolls and doesn't curl back up. Now we are trimming that, so if that were to happen, that wouldn't be a big deal because it's basted here about 1/2 inch to maybe 3/4 of an inch down. So that will be in the area that's cut off. So at this point now we can do just the opposite of what we were doing before, because before we had it all here and we were rolling this way, and now we're rolling this way. So it's a little opposite trick here. Couple of things I want you to keep in mind. When you quilt here and you don't quilt here, or if you are quilting here and not quilting here, what happens is those areas where you're quilting kind of draw everything up, and the areas where you're not quilting, they're still loosey-goosey. So it almost gives you a ruffle effect because you've got lots of fabric here and it's drawn in a bit here. I'm trying to think of a way to demonstrate that to you. So if you've got a piece of fabric, let's do this sideways, and you're quilting here, this is going to be an extreme example with a little exaggeration in it. You've quilted here, but you've not quilted here. This is essentially what you're getting. You're getting this kind of all gathered up a bit, but this is all loose. So if you don't quilt those areas, you will get that ruffledy effect. So you want to make sure that even if you don't want to quilt your outside areas as densely as the inside, you still have to provide some type of quilting or it's going to ruffle on you. If you want to create something that has quilting, let's say in the middle, and no quilting on the outside, then what I would recommend to you to do is to create the piece that's quilted and then sew your borders on so that you're matching that unquilted with the quilted, and you won't have to worry about that. That's something we have not covered on the show in any of our videos at all. And I haven't really run across something that I wanted to try to do that with, but that's good information. We might come back to that at another time. So now we've rolled this, and let me just log this. We can get it tight again. So when I start quilting down this way, you're going to see a couple of things. You're going to see some, what would I call them? Gathers or puckers or lines where they've quilted and rolled, because what you're doing when you're rolling them, you are forcing the pieces on the inside, which would be your backing and your batting, to conform to a smaller size than what's on the outside. Think of that cylinder. How if you're on the cylinder, it's a shorter distance than if you're an inch away from the cylinder. It's a longer distance. That's what's happening. So when you unroll, you begin to see a little bit of that. Now, once you take it off the frame, that's going to relax, and it won't really be an issue anymore. Because when you quilted it, it was stretched flat, and both are the same. It's just that rolling that causes that. So the point was, when you're stitching here along the line, along the edges in the border, or when I'm doing it, I need to be mindful that I'm going to have a little more fabric here than I do here. So I don't want to keep it so tight that I stitch in straight fabric and then all of a sudden I've got a ruffle or a crease back there. So just mindful, just keep checking to make sure that you're on track. And any extra fabric you can kind of ease in with pins along the way. Is there anything else we need to cover? I don't think so. We're pretty far along on this. I've got, for example, the inside line stitch from here, which is almost halfway down, all the way around to, where am I? To here. So I've got almost halfway, all the way across, and I'm starting down. The outside line, I also started here, which is, you know, I'm going to say a third of the way. It's probably not a half of the way. Third of the way up, all the way across, and I'm down to here. So pretty good bit, and I really haven't spent that much time with it because of other things that are going on here in the studio. But I think that a good couple of sessions up here sewing is going to get this done, and we'll be finished with it. And to take it off the frame, you're just unpinning it where you pinned it to the leaders to begin with. The only thing that's going to be different about this one is when we back roll it, which is what we're doing now, we're going to have, it's going to be just backwards from the way it usually would be. I think that's about it, all I wanted to cover today as far as the progress on this quilt. It is going pretty well. I was really stumped when trying to figure out how I wanted to quilt the border. I tried all kind of things. I tried geometric shapes. I tried creating little scallops, and I created little templates that I thought we could use along there. And I just really wasn't happy with any of them. I even tried the thought of, you know, this dark green fabric has little fireflies printed on it. And I even contemplated just using the design on the fabric and quilting random fireflies around it. But they're so small and they're so fiddly. You would have had a lot of stitches in a little tiny area, and then you would have had blank area, and then you would have had a lot of stitches. And I just didn't think it was worth the effort. And I was a little concerned about how it would it look odd? I think it would look a little odd. So I went back to a more traditional straight line quilting that would do this. I also tried making some of the hashes come to, hash marks on this grid come together and join up here. Good idea, but when I started stitching it, it just didn't seem to work the way I wanted it to. Sometimes the simplest ideas are the best and give you the result that you are looking for on that particular day. I think that's it for today. Still a fun project. I'm anxious to get it finished and see what it's going to look like hanging up. I'm excited to do that. And I think in the next couple of weeks we should be substantially finished with this, if not finished entirely, and we should be able to see the finished product. Thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this content, give me a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next week here at the Shamrock Quilt Studio. Bye.